Hey, Lifehouse Church, Pastor Daniel here. Hope you guys are having a great day today. Thanks for joining us for our Wednesday night devotion. Want to jump in here in just a second, but quick update on our fall festival. Man, you guys have just gone above and beyond, totally killing it. We are in such great shape as we gear up. Man, it's coming up a week from Saturday. So hard to believe, but it is fast approaching. A couple of quick things. One of them is the hayride that we wanted to offer. The person that originally has done that for years no longer has their hayride equipment. So we're just throwing it out there to see if anyone might have a tractor and a trailer that we could use and would be willing to help us out by putting on a hayride for our fall festival. It runs from 11 to 2. We'd love to offer a hayride through the entirety of that. So if that's you or you know someone, you can get in contact with them and see if they'd be interested. We'd love to know about it. Hit us up. You can shoot us a message, shoot us an email. You can email me, daniel@lifehousechurchohio.org. Let us know that you have a hayride and would be able to help. Man, we would be really grateful if you could help us out with that. In terms of our volunteer resources, I was just talking with Marcia Jenks, our children's director, who's also helping to organize the event. She said it'd be great if we had about 5 more cars for Trunk or Treat and about 8 more volunteers in total. So we're so close. If you can help get us over the top there, 5 more cars for Trunk or Treat, 8 more volunteers total. Like I said, week from Saturday. Guys, Fall Fest is a blast. I promise you will have a great time as we open our doors up to the community. And it's really, really a fun event. So if you're interested in helping us out with that, let us know. You can let us know. Shoot us an email, a message. Let us know on Sunday by signing up in person. We'd love to get you involved. Such a great community event. All right, well, tonight we're going to get into the Word. Been reading through and landed in one of my favorite stories in John 11, the story of Lazarus. And the story of Lazarus rising from the dead, one of the most recognized stories in all of the New Testament. Takes up a whole chapter in John. And if you read through the New Testament, most of the accounts of Jesus' miracles, maybe take up 4 or 5 verses. They're not huge, long tellings. But the story of Lazarus is different. The story of Lazarus really takes up a lot of time in the Gospel of John, and there's so much in it. There's no way we're going to cover everything that you can get out of the story of Lazarus just in our short time together. I remember loving this story as a kid, really because it has the shortest verse in the Bible. The shortest verse in the Bible is found in John chapter 11. And as a kid, that's great. One, because it's just a great useless, it really is kind of just a useless fact. And then also it made memory work super easy. It's like, I know a verse in the Bible, John 11:35. It's just, I still remember. And so John 11, really cool chapter. So we're going to just kind of recap the story. And I just want to share with you a couple things that jump out at me as I read through John 11 again, the story of Lazarus. So just a quick recap. Lazarus is a friend of Jesus. In fact, in the telling of the story, John calls Lazarus someone that Jesus loves. So not just an acquaintance, not just a Facebook friend, but someone that Jesus really has a good relationship with. Lazarus is actually the brother of Mary, who anointed Jesus' feet with perfume. You may be familiar with that story. Mary anoints Jesus' feet with some very expensive perfume. I don't even know what expensive perfume is. Calvin Klein. I have no idea what expensive perfume is, but whatever it is, that's what Mary was using. And so Lazarus is Mary's brother. Well, Lazarus gets sick, and word reaches Jesus. They send word to Jesus, hey, find Jesus, because they know that Jesus can heal Lazarus. But Jesus, once he gets word, he doesn't go right away. There's a delay. He waits, and then in this process, Lazarus passes away. He dies. And so Jesus is getting ready to head to Bethany, where Lazarus' family is. Now, an interesting side note and side tension into this story is that Bethany is located just a few miles outside of Jerusalem, where there is a warrant for Jesus' arrest. They are trying, the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law, they want to arrest Jesus. They're tired of him stealing their power and their authority, and they're tired of his influence. And so it's a dangerous proposition for Jesus to get this close to Jerusalem. There's a good chance, and even the disciples are saying, well, Jesus is going to go die. Let's go die with him. They know that this is a dangerous thing for Jesus to go back into Bethany to see the family and to see Lazarus. So that sets the stage for this story and sets the stage of the tension of this visit. And there's so much, like I said, that we can get into in the story of Lazarus. But as I was reading it, there's three things that really jump out at me as I read through the story of Lazarus. The first one is found in John 11, verse 21. So Jesus arrives on the scene, and Lazarus is dead. And Martha runs out to meet Jesus. And she says in verse 21, "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died." If you had only been here, my brother would not have died. And I really, that just jumps out at me, because haven't we all prayed that at some point to Jesus? Haven't we all prayed that prayer at some point? Haven't we all felt that in our heart at some point? God, if you had only been here, my loved one wouldn't have died. If you had only been here, God, I wouldn't have gotten fired. If you had only been here, where were you, God? If you had only been here, we wouldn't have filed for divorce, God. If you had only been here, if you'd only been here sooner, God, I wouldn't have fallen into addiction or fallen back into addiction. And it's so easy in our lives. You do it, I do it. If we're honest with each other, it's easy to doubt God when we feel like He is always running late. It's like the rabbit in Oz. It's like Dorothy or Alice in Wonderland. My goodness, that's the movie I'm trying to think of. It's like the rabbit. It's always running late, right? It's like we need to get God a new clock. Like his alarm clock isn't working, or it's like don't we feel like God is running late sometimes? And God, where are you, God? Why aren't you showing up? But really, when we do that, we have to understand that what we're doing in that situation is we are trying to hold God accountable to our time, to our schedule, to our preferences, to our will. When we feel like God is running late, we're saying, God, you're not meeting my expectations. You're not acting in this situation like I think you should act. God, where are you? Why aren't you on time? And one thing as followers of Christ we have to understand, it's not easy to say or easy to hear, but God is always on time. But His time and our time oftentimes are two different things. God is always on time, but oftentimes His time and our time are two different things. Jesus showed up in this story right when He was supposed to. He showed up in the Father's perfect time. But to Mary and Martha, He didn't. To Mary and Martha, He was late, but Jesus knew He was right on time. And what I like in this, though, is so Martha could have just stopped right there in verse 21. She could have just said, if you'd only been here, my brother wouldn't have died. She could have been mad at Jesus. She could have been irate. Where were you? Why didn't you show up? Don't you care about us? I thought you and Lazarus were boys. I thought we meant more to you than that. Couldn't you see how easy it would have been for Martha in her grief, in her emotions, to just lash out at Jesus, to just, man, who do you think you are, Jesus? And just go on. I can just totally see this story devolving and going in that direction. But Martha doesn't do that. To Martha's credit, I think one of the most powerful things she says is in verse 22. She says, "But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Even now, God will give you whatever you ask. And then if you skip down a few more, Jesus is kind of testing her, like, hey, your brother's going to rise again. And Martha's like, I know he will on the last day. And Jesus says, very famous, I'm the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And then he says, do you believe this? And then at verse 27, she says, yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come to save the world. Martha had confidence in the person of Jesus and not just in an outcome. Her confidence wasn't based in an outcome. Her confidence, her trust wasn't based in a situation. Her trust, her confidence, her belief was in the person of Jesus. She believed she could trust Jesus despite what she saw, despite what she felt. And I want to tell you, that is faith. That is faith, when despite what we see, despite what we feel, despite what we may even think we know, we say, but I trust in Jesus. I don't trust in Jesus to do something. I'm not trusting in him for an outcome. I trust in him. I believe in him. My confidence is in him. I believe he's the Messiah. I believe he's the life. I believe he's the resurrection. And that's what my trust is in. Faith is declaring what you believe and who you believe Jesus is, despite what your circumstances tell you. Martha exercised that kind of faith in this chapter. Her brother, her friend Lazarus is dead. Jesus shows up late. But she says, in spite of that, even now, God, I believe in you, Jesus. Even now I believe that you have the power to do whatever you want. Man, that's faith. And that kind of faith challenges me, and that's the kind of faith I want in my life. Another thing that jumps out at me in this chapter is in verse 35, the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. 2 words, so easy to gloss over, so easy just to relegate this verse to Bible trivia. What's the shortest verse in the Bible? John 11:35, Jesus wept. So easy to make that mistake. I think there is so much power in these 2 words, Jesus wept. And this jumps out at me because Jesus shows up on the scene and he knows exactly what's going to happen in this story. Jesus is already at the end of chapter 11, if you know what I mean. He already knows. He knows what's going to happen. He knows that Lazarus is going to be resurrected in this moment. And I want to tell you, if I show up on the scene, everyone's crying, everyone's sad, I just would have shown up and be like, guys, why are you so sad? Y'all, get a load of this. You see what I'm getting ready to do. I would have come in and been upbeat, maybe cocky, just like walking in with some swagger, knowing, hey, y'all, you have no idea. I'm about ready to blow your mind. Jesus doesn't show up like that. He shows up and he sees everyone in pain, and he doesn't minimize their pain. He doesn't gloss over it. He doesn't just try to get to the conclusion or the resolution of the story. Jesus doesn't rush by their pain. He enters into it. He weeps with them. I just think that's so powerful. Where is God? Where is Jesus when you're hurting, when you're mad, when you feel like he's late, when you feel like he's let you down, when the situation and the circumstance doesn't work out like you want it to and like you think it should? Where is God in that moment? He is hurting with you. He is weeping with you. Even though he sees the end, he sees the bigger picture, he sees the story, he sees the why that sometimes we don't see. Even on this side of eternity, we may never know all of the whys and all of the whats. He sees the full picture, the full perspective. He still enters into our pain with us. He hurts with us. He weeps with us. Jesus wept. And I love this. And this gives me the confidence to trust in Jesus because we serve a God who cares. We serve a God who does not maintain distance from us. He cares about what's bothering us. He cares about what's worrying us. And because of this, it gives us the confidence to take even the small stuff to God. Even the stuff that we say, well, I should have enough faith not to take that to God. I should be a strong enough believer not to have to take that concern. Or maybe God doesn't care about the small stuff. If I have cancer, or if I have some, facing bankruptcy or whatever it is, well, then that's the time to pray. But God doesn't care about the small stuff in my life. I'll tell you, nothing can be further from the truth. He cares about the small details of your life, and he wants you to bring those things to him. See, I believe it's not a lack of faith to take our small stuff to God. It's a lack of faith not to take our small stuff to God. We can take the big stuff, of course, but God wants the small stuff too, because he enters into our world. He enters in. That's the whole story of Christmas, and the whole story of God incarnate is that Emmanuel, he enters into our world with us. He doesn't just stand distant. He enters into that world with us. Finally, third thing that I see is in verse 44. It says this. So Jesus says, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. And this scene is funny to me in a way, because I just imagine Lazarus coming out and he's all wrapped up in bandage, and I feel like it's something out of like The Mummy Returns. He's like, just Lazarus coming out. It's like, what a perfect story for Halloween, right? It's just, that's the image I have in my head when I think of this story. But what jumps out at me when I read this is, man, how many Christians, how many times in my life and in your life have we been resurrected to new life by believing in Jesus, but we still we don't experience the fullness of that new life. We don't experience the fullness of that because we refuse to take off our grave clothes. That we've been resurrected, that Jesus is, when we accept Jesus, when we accept the gift of his salvation, the Bible says we're born again. There's new life. The old things are gone. The new life has come. But yet we sometimes we don't experience the fullness of that because we refuse to take off the grave clothes. It's like there's so many Christians who are walking around, just covered in grave clothes and covered in death because we refuse to take those off. We still cover our minds and our hearts and our spirits with things that bring death. And that's why in the word it says whatever's true and noble and lovely and trustworthy. It's like think worthy of praise. Think on these things. And what is that process about? Renewing your mind in the word. What is that process about? It's about taking off the grave clothes. We've been raised to new life, so we don't want to walk around and fill our minds and fill our day with things that bring us death. Man, we want to be continually stripping off those grave clothes of bondage, those chains of the old life. Man, we want to strip those things off by the power of God. He's resurrected to new life. Let's not walk around in grave clothes anymore. Let's renew our minds with things that are good and things that are worthy of praise and things that are excellent, things that spur us on to righteousness, spur us on to love God and to love others. See, Jesus doesn't just want to raise us to new life. He wants to remove that stench of death off of us. In the story of Lazarus, they didn't want to roll the stone away because he'd been dead for 4 days and the body, they didn't have the embalming stuff that we have today. The body was starting to smell. And Jesus not only raised him to new life, but I think he got that stench of death off of him. That's what he wants to do for us, to be Christians that are raised to new life and don't smell like death anymore, that don't smell like decay anymore. But man, we're free from that. We're living fully in him. So let's set aside the grave clothes, the things that drag us down, the things that bring death to our spirits and our minds and our hearts. And God's called us to live abundant life. I've come to give you life and life to the full. And that's not just after we croak and go to heaven. He wants us to experience that life now. So are there grave clothes in your life? Are there things that are holding you in bondage? Are there things that are bringing the stench of death to you? Maybe today's a day where you take some time in prayer to examine your heart, to examine your mind, to examine your spirit. Am I holding on to grave clothes? Am I holding on to the stench of death? God, help me to lay that down. Help me to give that to you so I can experience life and life to the full. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Hope that this was helpful for you. We're continuing our series, Haunted, this Sunday, and we're talking about being haunted by doubt. And one of the greatest stories in the New Testament, one of the greatest miracle stories. We'll be talking about that this Sunday. Join us at 9:30 or 11 o'clock, either online or in person, and we will see you then. God bless you guys. Have a great rest of your week.